You're not the kind of daughter people make speeches for. That's what my mother said to me in the parking lot, 5 minutes after I gave the biggest speech of my life. Not congratulations. Not I'm proud of you. Just that. A sentence that sliced through every ounce of self-worth I had been scraping together for years. Let me back up. I'm Maya Johnson, 21 years old. First in my family to attend college. First to get a full scholarship. First to be invited to speak at the senior awards banquet. And the first to be reminded, at the most pivotal moment of my life, that none of it mattered to the people I wanted to impress most. It happened on a Thursday night, inside the campus ballroom lined with white tablecloths and smiling administrators. I stood at the podium in a pressed blazer, fingers trembling slightly on the edges of my speech. My voice echoed across the clinking of forks and soft murmurs. I told them about tutoring, mentoring, volunteering. I talked about resilience and grit and believing in yourself when no one else does. The room clapped. Some stood. I looked toward table 6, where I had saved 2 seats for my mother and my aunt, with their names written in my neatest handwriting. Empty. But they weren't absent. Oh no. They were standing near the back exit, coats on, keys already in hand. I hurried down from the stage. I didn't care about photos or handshakes. I just wanted a moment. One moment. Can we take a quick picture before you go? I asked, smiling too hard to seem desperate. My mother barely turned. Maya, not now. We've got to beat traffic or we'll miss the first toast at Tasha's birthday. She adjusted her jacket, then added, almost as an afterthought, and stop acting like it's a Grammy. It's just a school thing. Just a school thing. The scholarship I bled for. The leadership award that came with it. The speech I spent weeks perfecting in the quiet corners of a library while she binge-watched reality TV at home. I said nothing. I nodded, backed away slowly, and watched them disappear out the double doors like I hadn't just made them the center of my biggest night. That's when she turned back, just for a second, and said it. You're not the kind of daughter people make speeches for. Then she left. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above my uncle's garage in Dayton, Ohio. My mom, Denise, worked 2 jobs and always reminded me that a roof over my head and food in the fridge was enough. She wasn't abusive. She wasn't a monster. She just didn't see me. Didn't see the hours I spent studying on the kitchen floor while she napped. Didn't notice the straight A's or the glowing teacher notes. When I brought home awards, she'd nod and leave them in a pile of unopened mail. When I got accepted into Ohio State, she asked, "So, who's gonna help me with groceries now?" I used to pretend she was just tired. That maybe she'd come around. That maybe if I worked hard enough, got good enough, she'd finally see me. Mrs. Evelyn did. She was our neighbor downstairs. A retired librarian who wore brooches and always smelled like fresh linen. She let me study in her kitchen during high school when things got too loud at home. She read my scholarship essays and circled grammar errors with purple ink. You're going to do something big, Maya, she told me. I just hope the right people notice before it's too late. She passed away my sophomore year. I never got to tell her that her voice in my head got me through midterms, heartbreak, and 3 part-time jobs. When I got into Ohio State, I thought things would be different. I had a plan. Double major in psychology and education. Join leadership programs. Graduate debt-free. Make her proud. Except nothing changed. She visited campus once, only because she was already nearby for a bingo tournament. She brought Tupperware with leftovers and criticized my dorm bedding. Why are you wasting money on all this nonsense, she muttered, tugging at the school pennant on my wall. So I stopped asking her to come. I started celebrating wins alone. Dean's List? I bought myself a cupcake. Passed biostats? I took a solo walk around Mirror Lake. Made it into the mentorship program? I called Mrs. Evelyn's old number and listened to her voicemail just to hear her voice. But deep down, I still hoped. Still waited for that one moment where she'd finally show up. Where she'd beam at me from the crowd and say, "That's my daughter." Graduation was supposed to be it. I bought her a dress, soft blue chiffon, elegant, but not too flashy. Her favorite color. I left it hanging on her bedroom door 2 weeks before the ceremony. Attached was a handwritten note. I made it, Mom. I'm walking across the stage. Please be there. Love, Maya. She never brought it up. The week before graduation, I texted her 3 times with details. Starts at 10 a.m. Parking's easiest on the east lot. There'll be breakfast after. No response. Graduation morning, I curled my hair, put on my gown, and stood by the mirror trying to convince myself that it didn't matter. That it was just a ceremony. But it mattered. I walked alone to the ceremony hall, holding my speech in one hand and a graduation cap in the other. And when I looked into the crowd, no one, not my mom, not my aunt, not even a neighbor, just rows of strangers clapping for students whose parents had brought balloons, flowers, and whole cheering squads. I delivered my speech anyway. Strong voice. Chin up. But after it ended, I found myself standing in the parking lot, staring at my phone. A single text came in. Hope the speech went well. We had to leave early. Tasha's party was a blast. That's when she pulled up in her car, rolled down the window, and said it again, like a casual fact. You're not the kind of daughter people make speeches for. Then she drove away. And I stood there, gown rustling in the wind, realizing something I should have known years ago. I was never going to be enough for her. So it was time to start being enough for me. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't turn on music. Didn't answer texts. I just sat in the silence of my borrowed Toyota Corolla, gown still clinging to my body like a second skin. My diploma folder lay flat in the passenger seat, unopened. The parking lot emptied around me, families heading to brunch reservations, photo ops, celebrations. I just sat there, alone, like a balloon that had floated to the ceiling and gotten stuck, forgotten. I thought I'd cry. I expected it. But the tears didn't come. Not yet. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Not just the speech or the snub or the party she prioritized, but the weight of every moment that had led to this one. Every overlooked success. Every tiny rejection I'd explained away. Every time I'd clung to crumbs and called it love. I wasn't sad. I was tired. Tired of trying to earn something I now knew I'd never get. By the time I pulled into the apartment complex where I lived with 3 other students, it was dusk. My roommates had all gone to their own family dinners, leaving our place unusually still. I peeled off my gown, folded it over the back of a chair, and sat cross-legged on the floor in front of the mirror. No cap, no cords, no makeup, just me. And for the first time in my adult life, I whispered the truth out loud. I don't want her love if I have to beg for it. It was barely a whisper, but it was real, and it echoed louder than any speech I'd given that day. I spent the next 3 days in a daze. Not sad, not depressed, just floating. I canceled the post-graduation dinner reservation I'd made for 2 at a mid-range Italian place downtown. The manager said he'd waive the cancellation fee. Congrats on graduating, he added cheerfully. I mumbled a thank you and hung up. I ignored the Facebook tags from old high school acquaintances congratulating me with confetti gifts and "so proud of you, girl" comments from people who hadn't spoken to me in years. And I didn't respond to my mom's text 2 days later. Hey, send me that video of your speech. Aunt Tasha wants to see it. She said you looked real cute in that little suit. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a request. On the 4th morning, I woke up with a thought that wouldn't leave me alone. What if I stopped waiting? Stopped waiting for her approval. Stopped waiting for some magical family do-over. Stopped trying to retrofit myself into the daughter she wanted and started becoming the woman I wanted. That thought turned into a spark. And that spark turned into action. I opened my laptop and typed up my resume. I'd already planned to take a gap year before applying to grad school, but now I wanted more than time. I wanted distance. Not just physical, but emotional. I needed space to figure out who I was outside of the invisible daughter role I'd been stuck in for years. I updated my LinkedIn, added the scholarship, the tutoring work, the research assistant role I took junior year, the community mentorship hours. Then I searched youth outreach coordinator jobs out of state. I didn't know where I'd end up. I didn't care. I just knew I had to leave. 3 weeks later, I landed a position in Raleigh, North Carolina, a nonprofit that worked with underserved middle schoolers. The pay wasn't amazing, but it came with housing, mentorship, and most importantly, purpose. The hiring director, Teresa, was a former teacher turned activist. During the interview, she said something I'd never heard in my life. "I read your personal statement. You're not just smart, Maya. You're deeply empathetic. We need more people like you in this field." I didn't know what to say. I was so used to downplaying my strengths, it felt strange to hear someone name them out loud. I accepted the job the next morning, booked a one-way bus ticket, sold my half of the dorm furniture, and packed my entire college life into 2 oversized suitcases. No one threw me a going-away party. There were no farewell brunches or gift baskets. But it didn't matter, because for the first time, I wasn't leaving to prove something to anyone. I was leaving to finally find peace with myself. Mrs. Evelyn used to say, "Sometimes we don't choose our starting point, but we sure as hell choose our direction." And Raleigh? Raleigh was the first step in a direction that was mine. I arrived on a humid August morning, sweat clinging to my neck before I even made it off the bus. Teresa met me at the terminal with iced coffee and a handwritten sign that said, "Welcome, Maya." It was cheesy. It was small. But I nearly cried, because no one had ever made a sign for me before. We drove through downtown, past brick buildings and mural walls, then wound our way to the east side, where the nonprofit had converted an old church into its headquarters. My room was a converted office upstairs. Nothing fancy. Just a twin bed, a desk, a lamp, and a window that faced a crepe myrtle tree. But it was mine. My space. My fresh start. Over the next month, I threw myself into the work. Mentoring sixth graders, coordinating supply drives, creating lesson plans for after-school programs. It was messy, unpredictable, exhausting, and I loved it. I met other staffers who became fast friends. Elena, who'd once been homeless and now ran the food pantry. Cam, a former foster kid turned grant writer. And Deshawn, a counselor who ran boys' mentorship programs and always played music too loud in the mornings. They weren't perfect. They weren't related to me. But they showed up. They asked how I was doing. They listened when I vented. They remembered my name, and not just when they needed something. One afternoon, Elena dropped a folded note on my desk. "You belong here. Don't forget that." I stared at it for a long time, because no one had ever said that to me before. Not without strings. It was around this time I realized something. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see you really see you and still choose to stand beside you. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to build one of my own. I was scrubbing crayon marks off the back wall of room 4 when my phone buzzed in my back pocket. It was a Thursday. A hot one. I'd just finished leading a confidence workshop for the girls' mentoring group, and I was still riding the high of watching little Kendra stand up and recite her poem, hands shaking, voice steady. So when I saw Mom flashing across my phone screen, I hesitated. It had been 3 weeks since I'd moved to Raleigh. 3 weeks of silence from her. No call. No text. Not even a comment on the social media post I'd made about starting the new job. And now, suddenly, a phone call? I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But some part of me, some old, reflexive version of Maya, still answered. "Hello." "Hey, baby." Her voice was soft, familiar, deceptively warm. I held the phone between my shoulder and ear, my hand still gripping the damp sponge. "Hi. I was just thinking about you. Haven't heard from you in a bit. Figured you were busy with that outreach thing." That outreach thing. Not your job. Not your new life. Just a vague, undefined activity she hadn't cared enough to ask about before. "I've been busy," I said simply. There was a pause. "Well, I'm proud of you, you know. Even if I don't say it enough." My heart stuttered. For one brief, traitorous second, I wanted to believe her. Wanted it to mean something. But then she kept talking. "Actually, reason I'm calling, the washing machine finally gave out. Flooded half the kitchen. The landlord says he'll fix the tile, but we've got to replace the unit ourselves. It's about $400 if we get it from that place on East 3rd. But they want it by Monday.
Ah,
There it was. I sank into the metal folding chair by the supply closet, the phone still pressed to my ear. Mom, I don't have that kind of money lying around. I just moved. I haven't even gotten my first full paycheck yet. I know, but you've always been smart with saving. And you don't have a car, right? So you're saving there. I mean, you're doing well now. You've got that fancy degree. Her tone turned sugary sweet, like she was selling me something. Or selling me something. And just like that, the high from earlier vanished. I'm not in a position to help right now. The line went quiet. Then,
wow.
after everything I'd done for you, Maya, there was again that guilt, that twist of the knife wrapped in maternal obligation. I'm sorry the washer broke, I said carefully. But I'm just starting out. I've got bills too. It's just a loan. Not like we won't pay you back. That was a lie. I knew it. She knew it. I'd loaned her money before. For groceries. For a phone bill. For emergencies. I never saw a cent again.
I can't, I said.
I need to focus on getting stable here. Her voice turned cold.
Fine.
Guess I'll figure it out. Like I always do. Some people never learn to help their own family. And then she hung up. No goodbye. No, I love you. Just a guilt grenade tossed into my day. I stared at the phone in my lap. It was like being 12 again, trying to explain why I couldn't go to the field trip unless she signed the form. And her saying, "You always need something, don't you?" The difference was, I wasn't 12 anymore. And this wasn't a permission slip. This was my life. That evening, I stayed late at the center, pretending to organize supply bins just to avoid going back to my room and sitting with the weight of it. Teresa found me an hour after closing, still sorting markers into color-coded boxes. You okay? She asked gently. I nodded, then shook my head, then sat down on the floor and told her everything. The graduation.
The speech. The party.
The dress she never wore. The call that wasn't really a call. It was a transaction disguised as concern. Teresa didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I was done, she handed me a granola bar from her bag. You know, she said, setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad daughter. It makes you a healthy adult. I looked at her, confused. You can still love someone and say no to them. You can still care and protect yourself. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. It felt like someone had handed me a new set of tools, ones I didn't know existed. Later that night, I typed out a message. I stared at it for nearly an hour before sending it. I hope the washer situation gets resolved, but I can't keep being your emergency fund. I'm trying to build something here, and I need space. I love you, but I need to choose myself for once. No response. For 3 days, nothing. Then finally a short reply. Don't worry. Tasha's boyfriend helped out. You don't have to stress. Thought family meant more to you. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something else. Confirmation that I was making the right call. The next few weeks passed quietly. Work picked up. I got assigned a new group of students, and we started prepping for the fall community showcase. I helped coordinate a parent workshop on trauma-informed education. I even submitted an op-ed to the local paper about the power of mentorship. I was building something.
Slowly. Steadily.
And something inside me was healing, also slowly, also steadily. One afternoon, I came back from a supply run and found a small package on my desk. No return label. No note. Inside was a framed photo. It was from graduation. But not the one I'd expected.
It wasn't a selfie.
It wasn't a blurry phone snap. It was a professional shot. Me at the podium, hands gripping the mic, face lit with passion and fire. Someone had ordered it for me. Underneath the photo was a sticky note, written in tidy cursive. You were always the kind of girl people make speeches for.
E.
My breath caught in my throat. Mrs. Evelyn. I'd completely forgotten. Before she passed, she'd told me she'd ordered the university's photographer's package just in case. I thought she was joking. But somehow, some way, it had found its way to me. I hung the photo on the wall above my desk. And every morning after that, I started my day by looking at it and reminding myself, I don't need permission to be proud of myself. I don't need applause to keep going. I don't need people who only show up when they want something.
It was a Monday morning when it arrived.
A thin white envelope with my name handwritten across the front. No return address, no postage. Just slipped under my door like a secret. At first, I thought it was another donation receipt or maybe a thank you card from a student's parent. But when I opened it, my breath caught. It was a formal invitation. The Ohio Educators Fellowship, a one-year graduate assistant program back at my alma mater. My alma mater. The same place I walked across the stage alone. The same campus where I learned how to teach and how to survive heartbreak. They wanted me to return.
To teach part-time.
To research youth engagement programs. To mentor incoming students. And, according to the second page, to co-lead the keynote panel at the freshman welcome event. There, in neat serif font, was my name. Maya Johnson, BA, educator and youth advocate. I had to reread the sentence 3 times. It felt like a joke.
Or a test.
Or maybe both. I sat down on my twin bed, the envelope limp in my hands, and stared out the window at the crepe myrtle tree swaying in the late September wind. Why now? Why me? I carried the letter around all day like it might change if I blinked. It burned in my pocket while I taught writing prompts to the after-school group. It buzzed like static while I helped Cam set up for the weekend fundraiser. It clung to the corners of my thoughts like a question I didn't know how to answer. When I finally showed it to Teresa, she beamed. "This is huge," she said. "You could really shape policy with something like this." I nodded, but I couldn't smile. "Back to Ohio, though," I said quietly. She picked up on it immediately. "You're not going for your mom," she said. "This is for you. The question is, are you ready to be back there without becoming her daughter again?" The words landed hard, because that was it. I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of shrinking, of walking back into that town and forgetting everything I'd fought for. That night, I called Lily. It had been months since we last spoke, our college lives diverging into different time zones and new responsibilities, but hearing her voice brought a rush of something warm and familiar. She listened patiently while I explained the opportunity. Then she said, "Okay, imagine someone else told you this story. A girl who walked across a stage alone, who built her life from scratch, who finally got seen. Would you tell her not to take the offer?" I didn't answer. "You don't have to run from your hometown," she continued. "But if you do go back, you go on your terms. You don't ask for a seat. You bring your own damn chair." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. By Thursday, I had filled out most of the application. There was one essay left. Describe how your personal story has shaped your educational mission. I stared at the blinking cursor for hours. Because how do you explain a lifetime of being overlooked without sounding bitter? How do you turn abandonment into curriculum? Eventually, I started typing. I know what it's like to grow up unseen. I know what it's like to give your best and be told it's just a school thing. I know what it's like to crave applause that never comes, and to build your own audience of one. My story isn't about surviving trauma. It's about transforming absence into presence. I teach so that every child knows they matter. That effort counts. That silence doesn't mean failure. I used to think success was about proving people wrong. Now I believe it's about proving to yourself that you were right all along. I hit submit before I could second-guess myself. The confirmation email arrived the next morning. Interview scheduled. Final round. Virtual. Monday at 10 a.m. I almost cried. Not because I was scared. Because for once I felt ready. That weekend, I prepped obsessively. I reread my essays. Researched the panel organizers. Practiced questions with Teresa and Cam. I even borrowed Elena's blazer because mine still had coffee stains from orientation week. I was calm. I was focused. Right up until Sunday night, when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in weeks.
Mom.
Just a missed call. Then another. And another. By the 4th attempt, she finally left a voicemail.
"Hey.
Your Aunt Tasha mentioned you might be coming back to Ohio? Something about a teacher fellowship?
I didn't hear it from you."
You know how that feels, Maya? To be left out? I'm your mother. I deserve to know what's going on. I pressed the phone to my chest and let out a long breath. There was again her version of love. Entitlement disguised as concern. Control disguised as care. I didn't call her back. Monday morning, I logged into the Zoom interview early. The 3 interviewers, 2 professors and 1 state education rep, greeted me warmly. They asked about my work in Raleigh, about youth mentorship, about sustainable engagement programs. And then, the final question came from the gray-haired professor in the center square. Why do you want to return to Ohio? For a moment, I froze. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because finally I did. I want to show students what it looks like to come back stronger. I said it clearly, confidently. No performance. No apology. To return not because you need validation, but because you're ready to lift others. There was a pause. Then the professor nodded. Well said, Maya. By Wednesday, the acceptance email was in my inbox. I had 1 week to decide. But I already knew. This wasn't about going back. It was about moving forward, on ground I'd already outgrown. I stepped off the train in Columbus with a duffel bag over my shoulder, and every muscle in my body clenched tight. It had been 10 months since I left Ohio. 10 months since I packed my life into 2 suitcases and told myself, you're allowed to want more. And now, here I was, back on the same campus where I walked across the stage alone, invited this time not as a student but as a leader. The fellowship had covered my travel. The university booked me in a guest suite at the on-campus hotel. They even offered to have someone pick me up at the station. But I declined. I needed to walk. I needed to feel the pavement beneath my sneakers and pass the buildings where I once cried between classes or skipped lunch because my bank account hovered under $10. As I walked, I passed a pair of freshmen, arms full of move-in boxes. Their laughter floated on the breeze. I felt both a million miles removed and still tethered to their experience. I used to be them.
Hungry. Determined.
Alone. The orientation panel was scheduled for Friday. I arrived on Wednesday, giving myself 2 days to adjust, to breathe. But breathing wasn't easy, because she knew I was coming. I hadn't called her, but someone had. Aunt Tasha, probably. Or one of her friends who saw my name on the university's event page. The day after I got the fellowship, my mom posted a vague Facebook status that read, "Funny how people come back home once they finally think they're important." The post had 14 likes and 1 comment from someone named Patty. Don't let them forget where they came from. I didn't respond, but I read it.
Twice.
Thursday afternoon, after the fellowship orientation, I decided to visit the old neighborhood. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to feel stronger. Or untouchable. But as I turned down the familiar block, the air felt heavier. The corner store was still there, the same faded Coke mural flaking off the brick. Mrs. Evelyn's apartment sat quiet and dark, the curtains drawn. A new name was on the mailbox. And our old place, Unit 2B, looked exactly the same. Peeling paint, dead porch light, a familiar gray car parked out front. I stood across the street for a long time not moving, until the door opened. And there she was, my mother, still in that same worn hoodie, hair tied back in a lopsided bun. She was carrying a bag of trash toward the curb when she noticed me. At first, her eyes squinted, unsure. Then recognition dawned. Her face tightened, not into a smile, but something like defense. "So," she called across the street, "you finally came back." I said nothing. She set the trash bag down and crossed her arms. "Didn't think I'd see you in person. Figured you'd just send a postcard once you got famous." I crossed the street slowly, hands in my coat pockets. "I'm here for work," I said. "Speaking at the university." She snorted. "Of course you are." Her tone was bitter, but her eyes scanned me. My coat, my shoes, my posture. She was looking for weakness, for proof I hadn't changed. She didn't find it. She invited me inside, almost out of habit. I declined. "Just wanted to see the block," I said. "I won't be long." There was a beat of silence. Then her voice softened, just a hair. "You know, your old room still has that bookshelf. The one you built in 10th grade." I remembered it. crooked shelves, painted lavender. The first thing I'd ever made with my hands, and a borrowed drill.
Thanks, I said.
But I'm staying on campus. She nodded. Another pause. People ask about you, you know. Miss Carla from the corner store. Your old teacher. What's her name, Ms. Lennox? They all say you're doing big things.
I didn't reply.
Because I knew what was coming next. So now that you've got that good job, you planning to help out around here? There it was. No, I'm proud of you. No, congratulations. Just another transaction. I help people, I said quietly. That's why I do what I do. But I've learned I can't help everyone if it means losing myself. Her face hardened. Wow. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. I'd seen that look before. At the science fair, she didn't attend. At the scholarship banquet where she left before dessert. At my graduation, when she chose buffalo dip over me. She turned back toward the porch. I gotta finish laundry, she muttered. I let her go. And this time, I didn't follow. That night, I sat in my hotel room staring at the city skyline, wondering if going back had been a mistake. But then I opened my email. And there it was. Freshman welcome panel. Updated lineup. My name. My photo. My title. Maya Johnson. Educator, youth advocate, former OSU scholar. And suddenly I remembered why I came. Friday arrived warm and bright. The auditorium was packed, rows of nervous students, eyes wide with first-day hope and fear. I remembered that look. I had that look. The moderator welcomed everyone, then introduced the panel. As I stepped onto the stage, applause echoed through the room. Not roaring, not thunderous, but real. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read my prepared notes. I just told the truth. My name is Maya Johnson. I grew up 6 blocks from this university. I used to walk past this campus and wonder if I'd ever belong here. I came from silence. From empty chairs at awards banquets. From asking if I was enough, over and over, to people who never answered. And now I'm here. Not because I was chosen, but because I chose myself. You're allowed to be proud of yourself, even if no one else ever claps. The room was still. A few heads nodded. One girl in the second row wiped her eyes. I smiled. Not for them. For me. After the event, students lined up to talk to the panelists. One girl, tall, with frizzy hair and shy eyes, came up to me, clutching a notebook. I don't have anyone coming to move me in, she whispered. My mom didn't want to make the drive. I blinked. Me neither, I said. She smiled, small but brave. You'll do just fine, I added, and she nodded like it meant everything. That night, I boarded the train back to Raleigh. As the city lights disappeared through the window, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not sadness, not regret, but release. When the train pulled back into Raleigh, the city felt different. Not louder, not brighter, just mine. The streets looked familiar in a way they never had before. As if coming back wasn't just a return, it was a confirmation. I didn't just live here. I belonged here. Elena picked me up from the station in her beat-up Corolla, the trunk rattling like it always did. How was the big return? She asked, already passing me a protein bar before I could answer. I gave her the summary, the panel,
The speech.
the awkward sidewalk standoff with my mother. She didn't interrupt, just drove. Finally, as we stopped at a light, she looked over. You didn't go back to heal anything, she said. You went back to close the door. I hadn't thought of it that way. But she was right. I had gone back to my past and walked out on my own 2 feet. The following week was a blur. The after-school program launched a new curriculum on emotional intelligence, and I was tasked with developing an 8-week series on self-worth for middle schoolers. I threw myself into the work. Every lesson, every worksheet, every group activity, it all had pieces of me stitched into it. Journal prompts like, what does love feel like to you? Discussion starters like, have you ever felt invisible? The kids were engaged, especially the girls. Kendra, in particular, started staying late just to talk. I'm not really smart, she told me one afternoon, fidgeting with the sleeves of her hoodie. You're Maya Smart, I replied, smiling. That's a whole different level. She lit up like I'd handed her a trophy. That Friday, I came home to a thick envelope taped to my door. No return address. Inside, a handwritten letter. Pages of it. From my mother. The handwriting was unmistakable, looped, slanted, slightly shaky, like always. I stood there, frozen in the doorway, holding it like a bomb. Part of me wanted to rip it in half. Part of me wanted to throw it away. But instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, took a breath, and read. Maya, I guess you think I've been a terrible mother. Maybe I have. Maybe I didn't always say the right things. Maybe I should have clapped louder, hugged longer, asked more questions. But I did the best I could with what I had. You always wanted more than this place. That was clear from the time you were little. Always reading, always correcting people, always talking about when I go to college. You made people uncomfortable. You made me feel like I wasn't enough for you. And maybe that's where we both messed up. You wanted me to be more, and I wanted you to be less, just so you'd stay close. I was hurt when you left without really saying goodbye. Then I was angry when you didn't come back. But mostly I was scared. Scared that I didn't know how to love someone like you. Someone who was trying to build a whole new life I couldn't understand. But I want you to know something. I did love you. I do. Even if it came out crooked. I've never said this before, so I'll say it now. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I didn't show up when it mattered. If you never call again, I get it. But if there's still a door open, if there's still a way back, I'd like to try. Love.
Mom.
I stared at the last line until the ink blurred. And for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not because I needed her, but because part of me had always wanted to hear those words. I didn't respond right away. I let the letter sit on my desk for days. Each morning, I'd glance at it while brushing my teeth, waiting to feel something definitive.
Rage. Joy.
Forgiveness. Closure. But what I felt was something else. Conflict. The kind that made your chest tighten and your hands shake when you tried to be the bigger person. The kind that made you feel like maybe healing required a phone call, and maybe it didn't. Tuesday afternoon, after workshop ended, I sat with Teresa in the break room. I told her everything. She sipped her tea and listened, like she always did. You don't owe anyone a relationship that costs you your peace, she said finally. Even if they gave birth to you. I nodded, but I wasn't sure I agreed. She said she wants to try.
Teresa looked at me. Calm.
Gentle. Unblinking. And, do you want to try? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That night, I sat at my desk and reread the letter. Then I pulled out a blank sheet of paper. And I wrote, Mom, thank you for your letter. I appreciate the honesty and the apology. I've waited a long time to hear some of those things, and part of me needed them more than I realized. But I'm still healing. I'm still learning how to love myself in the places where your love didn't quite reach. That doesn't mean I hate you. It just means I need space to figure out what healthy love looks like now. You asking to try again means a lot. But rebuilding trust isn't a door I can throw open overnight. Maybe there's a path. Maybe one day we meet in the middle. But for now, I'm going to keep choosing peace. Even if that means distance. I wish you well.
Maya.
I folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and left it on the table. I'd decide tomorrow if I wanted to mail it. The knock came on a Sunday morning. I was still in my robe, steeping a cup of lemon tea, when the sharp, unfamiliar rap hit the door like a warning. 3 knocks. Then silence. I thought maybe it was Cam, needing help with the fundraiser flyers. Or Elena dropping off the books I loaned her. But something in my gut felt off, tight and uneasy. I peered through the peephole. And there she was. My mother. Standing on the stoop like she hadn't ignored my graduation, dismissed my dreams, or guilt-tripped me into silence for most of my life.
Hair done.
Lipstick on. Purse clutched in both hands like she didn't trust herself to let go. I didn't open the door right away. I didn't move at all. I just stared, heart pounding, throat tight. She hadn't texted, hadn't called, hadn't responded to the letter I finally decided to send 6 days ago. She had just come. After a long pause, I cracked the door, but didn't open it fully. "Hi," I said, voice flat, cautious. She looked up, startled, like maybe she hadn't expected me to answer. "Hey, baby," she said, smiling too fast. "You look good." I didn't respond. "I know I should have called," she continued. "But I wanted to see you." Still, I didn't move. Behind me, the kettle clicked off. "You came all this way?" I asked. She nodded, eyes scanning the hallway behind me like she expected balloons or a banner. "Figure it was time. You sent that letter." I figured that meant we could talk. I said I needed space. "But you also said maybe one day we could meet in the middle." I opened the door a little wider, enough to step outside, and close it behind me. "I didn't say today." We stood in silence on the front stoop, neighbors' dogs barking faintly in the background. She looked older, not just in years, in weight, in regret. But I didn't feel small around her anymore. I didn't feel like the kid hoping for a ride home or a proud smile from the bleachers. I felt solid, like someone who had finally built her own foundation. "I know I've got a lot to make up for," she said finally. "And I'm not asking you to forget everything. I thought maybe I could see your place. Take you to lunch.
Just talk.
Start fresh." It sounded reasonable. It always sounded reasonable. But reasonableness wasn't the same as readiness. "I'm not sure I'm there yet," I said. She swallowed hard, lips trembling just slightly. "So, you're just shutting me out?"
No.
"I'm protecting what I've built." I watched her flinch, but I didn't back down. She shifted her purse to the other shoulder. "You're always so strong now. Always putting up walls." "Maybe, because no one ever built any for me." She looked away. And for the first time since I was a child, I saw her. Really saw her. Not as a giant I had to please, but as a woman filled with her own wounds, half dressed as strength. And I felt something unexpected. Pity. But pity isn't the same as reconciliation. "Do you remember my 8th grade play?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The one where I played Harriet Tubman. I practiced for weeks. I asked you to come." She looked at the ground. "You said you couldn't because you had to work late. But later that night, I found photos of you and Aunt Tasha at a bowling alley." Her face crumpled just slightly. "I sat in the auditorium alone. Mrs. Evelyn clapped for me. No one else." A long silence passed. "I remember," she said. Barely a whisper. "I spent years waiting for you to show up. But I'm not that girl anymore. I show up for myself now. And I have people in my life who show up without being asked. I want to be one of those people," she said. "Then be consistent. Don't just appear on a Sunday and expect a clean slate." She nodded slowly. "I booked a motel near the station. I'll be here for one more night. If you change your mind, I'd love to have that lunch." Then she turned, walked down the steps, and disappeared around the corner. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, barefoot on the porch, heart thudding, lungs full of a new kind of clarity. That night, I called Lily. She answered on the second ring. "How did it go?" she asked. "She came," I said, unannounced. "She asked for lunch." "Did you say yes?" "Not yet. Maybe not ever." I didn't close the door. But I didn't open it all the way either. You don't know her full access just because she showed up. I know. "So, what do you want?" That question stayed with me long after the call ended. Not, "What does she want?" Not, "What does forgiveness look like?" But, "What do I want?" The next morning, I woke up early and walked to the bakery down the block for coffee and a croissant. I passed the motel on the way. Her car was still in the lot. I paused at the corner. Then I kept walking. Not out of anger. Out of peace. I didn't need a confrontation. Or closure. Or a clean ending. I needed a choice. And I had one now. It's been 6 weeks since she came to Raleigh. She didn't call again. Didn't text. Didn't leave a letter at my door. She just left. And this time, I didn't chase her. I didn't fold in on myself, asking what I did wrong. Because I finally understood. Some people will only love you in the way they know how. And sometimes that's not enough. In the weeks that followed, something in me settled, like dust after a long, hard storm. I kept working, teaching, laughing, living. Kendra read her poem aloud at the school's fall showcase and got a standing ovation. Cam finished the grant application with my help, and we got the funding for new reading tablets. Teresa promoted me to assistant program director. But none of those were the thing that made me feel like I had made it.
It was a Tuesday night.
I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, sorting through photos for the mentorship bulletin board. A knock came at the door. It was Elena, holding a box of takeout and 2 plastic forks. "No special occasion," she said. "I just thought you could use dinner and some quiet company." She kicked off her shoes and sat beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world.
And it hit me. This.
This is what family looks like. No manipulation. No guilt. No history weighed down by disappointment. Just someone showing up.
Because they want to.
I haven't cut my mother off entirely. I send her holiday cards with updates about my work. She replies with one-liners. Sometimes. "Glad you're doing good. Saw your name on the school site. That's nice." It's not connection. But it's not conflict either. It's space. Distance with soft edges. And for now, that's enough. Last week, I got invited to speak at a statewide youth education conference. When I walked onto that stage, hundreds of teachers, social workers, and advocates watching, I didn't think about who wasn't in the room. I thought about who was. The kids. The ones who call me Miss Maya and ask if they can sit next to me during story time. The teens who hand me notes that say things like, "Thank you for seeing me." I'm not just building a career. I'm building a legacy. One that starts with this truth. You are allowed to choose peace over proximity. You are allowed to outgrow the love that taught you to shrink. Last night, I printed a new photo for my desk. It's not from college. Not from graduation. It's a snapshot Elena took without me noticing. I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor of the center, surrounded by kids, reading aloud from a picture book, laughing so hard my eyes are closed. That's who I am now. That's the version of me I fought to become. If you've listened this far, I want to say something to you. Maybe you're the first in your family to break the cycle. Maybe you're carrying invisible bruises from words that never should have been spoken. Maybe you walked across your own metaphorical stage and no one clapped. I see you.
You are not a mistake.
You're not too much. You are not unworthy because the people you loved couldn't love you back the way you needed. Your story doesn't end with their absence. It begins with your presence. So here's my final truth. I walked away, not in anger, not in hate, but in hope. Hope that who I become isn't defined by who failed me. Hope that healing doesn't mean inviting everyone back in. Hope that sometimes closure isn't a door swinging shut. It's choosing which rooms you're never walking into again.
And
that's freedom. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story reminded you of your own, leave a comment below. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if no one told you this today, I'm proud of you.
keep going.